found by the humble peasant woman, the wand of starry skies, protecting her people from invading darkness. The first butterfly, Queen Urania, the first one. Urania started out as a peasant girl who lived in a family of weavers. She lived with her mother, Darlene, and her grandmother. As an independent woman, Urania learned to weave from her mother and grandmother and was able to weave her own clothing starting at age 10. On Urania's 14th birthday, she had an argument with her grandma, who said to her granddaughter that her embroidery was a worthless waste of time and line. Urania fled near the river to a place she would always go to if she needed to be alone. Credit to jgss0109.deviantart.com. There, she was finishing up her white kitten embroidery until she fell asleep. Credit to jggs0109.deviantart.com. That night, she awoke to her village in flames by a monster attack. An attack that would be written as the Fire of 5 before midnight, and an attack that killed Urania's mother and grandmother. Devastated, Urania fled into the forest, carrying her kitty embroidery, the only memory she had of her dear family. When her feet did not have the strength to run any longer, she fell on her knees onto the ground, looking up at the starry night sky, begging for help. Just then, a shooting star ran through the sky and fell into the cornfield a few yards away from where she laid. In the depths of the crater, Urania found a meteorite, which had a shimmering butterfly-shaped crystal inside of it. When she touched it, Urania received her signature butterfly markings on her cheek. On the same night, she was faced by 3 monsters and was saved by the godmother, Baby, who came to life from the magic. Urania tried to perform and bounced off onto the embroidery. Soon afterward, Urania fainted, most likely from using magic for the first time. The next morning, Urania met a small, floating blue man with a fuchsia-colored crystal on his head and also wearing a light yellow robe. Instead of freaking out or having a panic attack, Urania was perfectly calm when the blue man explained to her, "You asked for help, and she came," he said, pointing at the crystal. "And my job is to help you reach your full potential." Once she got back to her village and found it decimated, Urania vowed she would protect her people. In order to do this, however, she needed to use the crystal without it cutting or burning her hands. Then, using materials she found from the debris of her house, Urania made a wand by tying the crystal to the end of a knitting needle with a red ribbon. Urania proved to be a dedicated student, for she practiced her magic every morning, noon, and night, stopping only to eat and to sleep. Urania's spells were very basic, from simple bursts of energy to basic levitation spells. Compared to what is done today, her spells are not exceptional in the slightest. You can find her spells in the basic chapter of the Book of Spells. Speaking of which, the Book of Spells first originated as her grandmother's account book, which was one of the only things that survived from the fire. The book became sentimental to Urania, and she started writing the spells she learned inside of it, with the magical fluid from the wand being used as ink. Urania defended the village relentlessly between the 5th and 2nd years of her foray, which is now known as the Battle of Independence. In Phobia, a small group had helped defend the village. The people soon called her Queen Butterfly in the same year. This title came obviously due to her cheek marks, her wand, and her Mewbert form. Between the years 4 to 3 before Mewni, a rough wooden and eastern construction was erected on the slopes of Great Mewni Rock, which would later become known as Urania's Fort. The fort would serve as headquarters during the Mewni-Pendence and later as a royal seat and home for the newly crowned monarch. One of Urania's first acts as queen was to name 6 ministers to aid her reign. These 6 ministers were the generals of Urania during the Mewni-Pendence, and from them, the noble houses of Mewni arose. In the year 2 a.m., Urania married Falcon Redbird, whom she had relations with since 5 p.m. Falcon was red-headed, spontaneous boy. He had eyes that were precise and alert as birds of prey, and could see enemies on the horizon. So he and his family were renamed Redbird. The wedding marked the opening of the Queen's Tower, which was the first stone structure of Butterfly Castle. Due to the fire of 5 before midday, Urania developed a trauma of fire. To keep the place warm during the winters, the warm waters of a nearby thermal region were channeled through the walls and the rooms. fireplaces would only be built after the death of Urania. In the first 3 years of her reign, Mewni has grown remarkably fast around Butterfly Castle. The small village was now a medium-sized town. Ships and galleys from neighboring kingdoms were already passing through Watersea Port. Urania also established that all castle employees would be paid employees, and made slavery and servitude a crime. The reason is the simple fact that their ancestors were servants who fled their masters. In 4 a.m. at age 23, Urania gave birth to her first child and heiress, Usagina Butterfly, the first princess of Mewni, a blonde girl with bunnies on her cheeks. And in 10 a.m. was born her second daughter, a girl with red hair and question marks on her cheeks, and her name was Butterfly. Although Mewni had its own knights, Urania did not stop defending her kingdom when possible. Monster stocks were very rare and not as threatening as they were years ago. When Usagina turned 14, she would inherit the wand. Urania made this decision because it was on her 14th birthday that she found the crystal. When the day finally arrived in 18 a.m., Urania applied an enchantment on the wand so that it changed its appearance according to the personality of the new user. The tradition began there and remained so for years to come. In 16 a.m., Queen Urania ordered the construction of a special room. It was to be large and, above all, comfortable. This room became known as the Mewberty Room, and it exists to this day. Urania built it that when the princess reached this stage of life, they would pass through it with tranquility and structure. The room was first used 2 years later. In 22 a.m., tragedy happened in Urania's life. Jokina, then 12, died after falling off the tower of her room. Royal mourning was decreed for a week in Mewni. In honor of her daughter, Urania ordered Jokina's statues, sculptures, and busts to be scattered around the castle, as well as the messages she left every morning. Urania ended her reign at 25 at age 43, after Usagina's marriage to Roderick Flowers. Although she was no longer queen, Urania continued to have an influence in court, helping her daughter from time to time. Urania would still live to see her daughter, Estelaria, inheriting the wand in year 42. On her deathbed, Urania performed her last royal act. She named the small blue man Sir Glossaric of Terms, honorary knight of Queen Butterfly of Mewni. "My thank you gift for being with me all these years," she told him. Urania died of natural causes in 44 Anno Mundi. She was 63 years old. Her body was buried in the crypts underneath the Butterfly Castle. Mewni and its citizens wept over the death of Urania, their first queen and their first heroine.